That's the autopilot in the middle and a pair of radios on either side. And I think that's getting to be a pretty standard setup. I like to keep the autopilot where you can have this closed and still have access to the autopilot because, in a lot of spray and bad weather, I like to keep this as dry as I can. But yet, it takes too long to pull this up and hit an autopilot. So a long time ago, many years ago, we went to putting autopilots here, and I think it's become a fair, you see more boats than I do, but I think you'll see a lot of autopilots up in this position now. This AP48 combined with the Viper system, what us old timers have to learn is to not touch that wheel because that automatically breaks it off autopilot. So I guess it's a great safety feature in that you can change it, but it's not a very good safety feature when you're going along half asleep and you bump against it and you hear it chirping all of a sudden because you're about 40 degrees off course, wandering off where you just touched it and broke it from pilot. You actually end up doing things a bit differently. I'm used to, starting in single engine boats, you always had to have your bow into the wind. But when you have your bow in the wind, as you come in, the bow is building up momentum with the wind to get what you get in the slip, and it's kabang. Well, with the old single engine boats, we thought that the pilot was just something you bounced off of anyway to get in. With these boats, you can actually come in from a completely alien to me downwind position and get your stern up in there right, and then just walk the bow up, and you come in just as gentle as a kitten. The single engine boat handles better at speed. It follows the rudder to some degree at speed, but coming in slow with a single, it's gonna suck whichever way the wheel. If it's got a left-hand wheel or right-hand wheel, it's gonna suck that way. Is what it does. A lot of the guys talk about increased maneuverability with using. I tell you what I do. I'm sort of conservative. I set my rudders to 0 and think that I'm putting less strain on the rudders by keeping them zeroed. It's not as quick, probably, in a pivot as going, as using the rudder to pivot you faster. I'm sure but I just don't like that force coming across that thing with it over like that and the force hitting it like that. There's got to be more strain on stuff. So I try to, given my choice, I try to center my rudders. There's some mighty good fishermen being developed now. I would think that back in the days when I was active, that in any given tournament, probably 10 or 15% of the boats had a chance of winning the tournament, with the technology that was available at that time. And I think now, the way boys are sharing information and stuff being publicized too, I expect 30-35% of the boats are capable of winning a tournament with everyone. You can't beat your own luck. But it used to be some boats, no matter how lucky they got, they just didn't have it. They weren't going to win. I think that the field of the people that are capable of winning has expanded to some degree. Fishing seems to be doing well, alive and well. I think we all have to agree with that. There's a lot of fishing in the world. And one thing we have to remember is that for every one of us who are fortunate enough to run around on these things, there's probably 100,000 guys looking for bass and brim. That's right. And that's important too. And in fishing, we all start off on bass and brim, and I think as we grow older, that circle can go all the way around where we start on the bass and brim, we go through the world's game fish, and then we end up in our dotage on the bass and brim again.
And enjoy it just as much.
And enjoy it just as much, and that's the important thing.